I raised my stepdaughter, but when she got pregnant, she said I wasn't her real mom, and her baby would have one. So I cut off all financial support. When she declared her child would have a true mother, unlike her, I ended all financial contributions from my side. I met David when I was 32. He was 35, and his daughter Emma was 9. Emma's biological mother had left when Emma was just 4. David shared that her mother struggled with addiction and mental health issues, making it impossible for her to properly care for Emma. David had full custody, and Emma rarely saw her biological mother, perhaps once or twice a year for supervised visits that often ended in disappointment when her mother didn't appear. When David and I began our relationship, I was cautious not to impose myself on Emma too quickly. I understood how challenging it could be for children to accept a new person in their parents' lives. I had never been married or had children of my own, but I always desired to be a mother and felt a strong connection to both David and Emma from the very start. Emma was initially quiet and reserved, yet also curious and intelligent. I could see she yearned for the attention and stability she hadn't consistently experienced. David and I took our time, about 6 months, before I began spending more time at their home and engaging in Emma's daily routine. I assisted with homework, packed lunches, and drove her to soccer practice and lessons. Slowly, Emma began to embrace me as a part of her life. David and I married when Emma was 11. By then, she had started calling me mom without prompting, which made me feel I had finally discovered my life's purpose. I loved her as my own child and wanted to provide her with all the stability and affection she had missed in her early years. I attended every school event and parent-teacher conference, helped with science fair projects and book reports, taught her cooking, laundry, and money management, and was there for every scraped knee, broken heart, and teenage drama over the years. David worked long hours as an engineer and traveled frequently, so I often managed the daily parenting responsibilities, and I cherished every moment, even when it was tiring and demanding. Emma and I developed a close bond over the years. She confided in me about everything: friend drama, boy troubles, and future anxieties. I supported her through her first heartbreak at 15, encouraged her when she wanted to quit piano for soccer, and spent countless hours helping her with college applications and scholarship essays during her senior year of high school. When she was accepted to the state university with a partial academic scholarship, I was so proud I wept. It felt like all the hard work and love I had invested in her over the years had been truly rewarding. Emma studied business in college and performed well academically, though she sometimes battled anxiety and self-doubt, which I believe stemmed from her early childhood experiences with her biological mother. I made sure she had access to counseling, services at school, and regularly checked in with her to ensure she was caring for herself and not becoming overwhelmed by coursework and social pressures. David and I visited her at school several times each semester, and she came home for holidays and summer breaks. Our relationship remained robust and close throughout her college years. After Emma graduated, she moved back home for a few months, while job searching. During that time, she met Sean at a friend's party. Sean was a few years older than Emma and worked at a company. He seemed like a decent young man, though I sometimes felt he was a bit immature and not quite prepared for a serious relationship. However, Emma developed strong feelings for him immediately, and within 6 months, they were discussing moving in together and getting engaged. This made me uneasy, as I thought they were rushing things and didn't know each other well enough. Yet, Emma found a job at a financial planning firm and moved in with Sean after about 8 months of dating. I tried to be supportive, despite my concerns about their relationship dynamics. Sean seemed to exert a lot of influence over Emma's decisions and opinions. I noticed she began altering some of her values and priorities to align with his, which worried me because she had always been so independent and strong-willed. David and I regularly invited them for dinner and tried to maintain a good relationship with both of them. But I could tell Emma was gradually distancing herself from us as her relationship with Sean deepened. When Emma was 24, she called me one evening to announce her pregnancy. While surprised, as they weren't married yet and hadn't planned to start a family so soon, I was also thrilled about becoming a grandmother and expressed my happiness for them. Emma seemed nervous and uncertain about the pregnancy at first, but she mentioned Sean was ecstatic, and they planned to marry before the baby's arrival, which seemed appropriate even if the timing wasn't perfect. I immediately began considering all the ways I could assist Emma in preparing for motherhood and supporting her through her pregnancy and the initial months with the baby. I had saved money over the years specifically for such occasions and planned to help them with nursery, furniture, baby clothes, and whatever else they needed to prepare for their first child. I started researching cribs, car seats, and strollers, eager to go shopping with Emma, help her register for baby gifts, and plan a baby shower. About 2 weeks after Emma told me about the pregnancy, she and Sean joined us for Sunday dinner, a long-standing family tradition. Emma seemed different that day, more distant and formal than usual. I could tell something was bothering her, but I didn't want to pressure her to talk if she wasn't ready. After dinner, while David and Sean watched football in the living room, Emma asked if we could speak privately in the kitchen. I thought she might want to discuss pregnancy concerns or seek advice. Emma sat down at the kitchen table and looked at me with an expression I had never witnessed before. She told me that she and Sean had been discussing the baby and their future, and they had decided they wanted to ensure their child grew up knowing the truth about their family relationships and not be confused about their actual relatives. I didn't grasp her meaning initially, so I asked her to clarify. Emma took a deep breath and stated that while she appreciated everything I had done for her over the years, she wanted me to understand that I wasn't her real mother and never had been. Now that she was becoming a mother herself, she wanted to ensure her child understood the distinction between biological and chosen family. She asserted her baby would have a true mother, unlike her, and she wanted no confusion about my role in their lives moving forward. I felt a momentary inability to breathe and questioned Emma about her comment that her baby would have a real mother, unlike her. Emma explained that she had reflected extensively on her own childhood and how perplexing it had been to have me acting as her mother when I wasn't truly her mother. She had concluded she didn't want to put her own child through that same experience. She said she and Sean wanted to be very clear about family boundaries and ensure their child knew precisely who their biological parents were and who was simply a step relative. I attempted to remain composed and asked Emma if she was implying that all the years I had spent raising her, caring for her, and being there for her didn't matter because I wasn't her biological mother. Emma replied that of course it mattered, and she was grateful for everything I had done. But that didn't alter the fact that I wasn't her real mother, and she didn't want her child to be confused about that distinction. She mentioned discussing it extensively with Sean, and they both agreed it was important to be honest about family relationships from the outset. Tears began to well in my eyes, and I asked Emma if this meant she no longer considered me her mother. She responded that I had been like a mother to her, but I wasn't actually her mother. And now that she was going to be a real mother herself, she grasped the difference. She hoped I would still want to be involved in her child's life as David's wife and Emma's stepmother, but she wanted to ensure everyone understood their proper roles and relationships. The conversation continued for about 20 more minutes, with Emma explaining her viewpoint and me struggling to comprehend how the daughter I had raised and loved for 15 years could suddenly decide our relationship didn't count as genuine because we weren't biologically related. Emma kept emphasizing she wasn't trying to hurt me and that she appreciated everything I had done. But she also kept repeating that I wasn't her real mother, and her child would be fortunate to have a real mother from the beginning, unlike her. When we rejoined David and Sean in the living room, I could barely compose myself. David sensed something was wrong, but I didn't want to create a scene in front of Sean, so I waited until after they left to tell him what Emma had said. David was shocked and angered, unable to believe Emma would say such hurtful things to me after everything I had done for her over the years. That night, I couldn't sleep, repeatedly replaying the conversation with Emma in my mind. I recalled all the times Emma had called me mom, expressed her love, and sought my comfort and advice. I couldn't reconcile those memories with the cold, dismissive way she had spoken to me that evening. I wondered if Sean had influenced her perspective, or if she had always harbored these feelings and merely concealed them from me. Over the next few days, I kept expecting Emma to call and apologize or explain she'd had a difficult day and didn't mean what she said. But no call came. David tried to speak with her, but she stood by everything she had stated, insisting she was simply being honest about family relationships and didn't understand why we were making such a significant issue of it. She reiterated that she still loved me and wanted me to be part of her life, but she wanted clarity about boundaries and roles, especially now that she was becoming a mother. I realized Emma's attitude toward me had fundamentally shifted and wouldn't revert, and I had to decide how to respond to this new reality. I had always handled most of the financial support for Emma's needs and desires, from school supplies and clothes when she was younger to assisting with college expenses and providing money for emergencies or special occasions. David also contributed, but I had managed most of the daily financial decisions regarding Emma and had saved a substantial amount of money over the years specifically to help her with major life events like marriage and having children. I had already begun planning to financially assist Emma and Sean with baby-related expenses, and had been looking forward to being the kind of grandmother who could spoil her grandchild and ease their lives in any way possible. I had envisioned taking Emma shopping for maternity clothes and baby furniture, hosting a baby shower, establishing a college fund for the baby, and actively providing financial support throughout the child's life. However, after Emma's declaration that I wasn't her real mother and her baby would have a real mother unlike her, I began to question whether I should continue providing financial support for someone who had made it clear she didn't consider our relationship genuine or meaningful beyond the legal step relationship. I reflected on all the money I had spent on Emma over the years, from everyday expenses to major purchases, and how I had always been happy to do it because I considered her my daughter and wanted to give her everything I could. I decided that if Emma wanted to establish clear boundaries between biological and chosen family, then she should be prepared to live with the repercussions of those boundaries. If I wasn't her real mother, then I shouldn't be expected to provide the kind of financial support that real mothers typically provide to their children. If she wanted to make it clear that I was merely David's wife and her stepmother, then perhaps I should limit my involvement to whatever level she thought was appropriate for someone in that role. I discussed my decision with David, and he initially tried to persuade me to reconsider, believing I was acting out of hurt feelings and might regret cutting off financial support later. He pointed out that Emma was young and might not fully understand the implications of her words, and that she might come to her senses after the baby was born and realized how much she needed our support. But I explained to David that this wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about respecting the boundaries Emma had established and responding appropriately to her redefinition of our relationship. I told David that I had spent 15 years pouring my love and resources into Emma because I considered her my daughter. But if she didn't view our relationship that way, then I needed to adjust my expectations and behavior accordingly. I said that I would still be polite and cordial to Emma, and would treat her as I would treat any other young woman married to someone in my extended family. But I wasn't going to continue acting like her mother if she didn't want me to be her mother. David eventually understood my perspective, though he was still hoping Emma would realize her mistake and apologize, allowing us to return to our previous family dynamic. I told him that I hoped that would happen too, but I couldn't continue to invest emotionally and financially in someone who had explicitly rejected the relationship I thought we had. I said that if Emma wanted to rebuild our relationship on different terms in the future, I would be open to that conversation. But for now, I needed to protect myself from further hurt and disappointment. I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfers I had been making to a savings account earmarked for Emma's future needs. And I also canceled plans to purchase baby furniture and other items I had been planning to buy for the nursery. I didn't announce these changes to Emma or make a grand statement about it. I simply stopped doing the things I had been doing to provide financial support and assistance with various expenses and purchases. The first time Emma noticed the change was about 2 weeks later, when she called to ask if I could help her and Sean with the deposit for a larger apartment they wanted to rent before the baby was born. I told her that I wouldn't be able to assist with that expense, and when she asked why, I explained that since she had made it clear I wasn't her real mother, I had decided to limit my financial involvement to whatever level was appropriate for someone in my actual role as her stepmother. Emma seemed surprised and upset, and said she hadn't expected me to react this way to their conversation about family boundaries. She said she thought I would understand that drawing clear distinctions between biological and step relationships didn't mean she loved me less or wanted me to be less involved in her life. I told Emma that I did understand her position, and I was simply responding to it logically, because if I wasn't her real mother, then I shouldn't be expected to provide the kind of financial support that real mothers typically provide. Emma asked if I was punishing her for being honest about our relationship, and I explained that I wasn't punishing anyone. I was just adjusting my behavior to match the boundaries she had established. I said that if she wanted me to be involved in her life as a stepmother, then I would be involved at whatever level seemed appropriate for that relationship. But I wasn't going to continue acting like her mother if she didn't want me to fill that role. The conversation became tense, and Emma accused me of being petty and vindictive, which hurt because I had tried to explain that my decision was based on logic rather than emotion. I told Emma that I wasn't trying to hurt her, and I hoped she would be happy and successful in her life. But I also needed to protect myself from the confusion and pain that came from continuing to act like her mother when she had explicitly told me I wasn't her real mother. Emma hung up the phone without resolving anything. Over the next few weeks, she tried several times to get David to convince me to change my mind about providing financial support. David explained my reasoning to her but also encouraged her to apologize and try to repair our relationship, which Emma refused to do because she said she hadn't done anything wrong by being honest about family relationships. As Emma's pregnancy advanced, there were several other occasions when she requested financial assistance with various expenses related to preparing for the baby. Each time, I politely declined and reiterated that I was limiting my involvement to whatever seemed appropriate for a stepmother rather than a mother. Emma grew increasingly frustrated with this response and began complaining to David that I was being unreasonable and cruel by withdrawing support when she needed it most. David found himself caught in the middle of our conflict and attempted to mediate by suggesting compromises that might satisfy both of us. However, Emma refused to acknowledge that her comments about real mothers had been hurtful or inappropriate, and I refused to continue providing financial support for someone who had explicitly rejected our parent-child relationship. David eventually ceased trying to mediate and told Emma that she needed to work things out with me directly if she wanted to change the situation. Emma's biological mother had been largely absent from her life throughout most of the pregnancy, typical of their relationship pattern over the years. Emma had tried to reconnect with her biological mother a few times during her teens and early 20s, but these attempts usually ended in disappointment when her mother failed to follow through on promises or appeared intoxicated to planned meetings. I had always supported Emma's desire to have a relationship with her biological mother, even though it sometimes meant dealing with the emotional aftermath when those attempts failed. About 2 months before Emma's due date, her biological mother contacted her and expressed interest in being involved with the baby, which seemed to reinforce Emma's belief that biological relationships were more important and meaningful than chosen relationships. Emma started discussing how excited she was that her child would have a real grandmother through her biological mother, and she seemed to think this validated her decision to draw clear boundaries between biological and step-family members. However, I knew from years of experience that Emma's biological mother was unreliable and would likely disappoint Emma and potentially endanger the baby if given access to them. But since I was no longer in the role of mother or advisor, I didn't feel it was my place to caution Emma about the potential problems of relying on her biological mother for support and guidance. Emma gave birth to a healthy baby boy in early spring. David and I visited the hospital to meet our new grandchild. Emma seemed pleased to see us and was proud to show off the baby, but tension still lingered in our relationship, and she made several comments about how wonderful it was that her son would have a real grandmother through her biological mother. I held the baby and congratulated Emma and Sean, but I kept my visit brief because I could feel the emotional strain of the situation. Over the next few months, Emma's biological mother did become more involved in her life and with the baby. However, as I had anticipated, this involvement was inconsistent and at times problematic. Emma's mother would promise to babysit and then cancel at the last minute, or she would arrive for visits having been drinking, or she would offer parenting advice that was outdated or potentially harmful. Emma began to grow frustrated with her biological mother's unreliability, but she was hesitant to admit the relationship wasn't working out as she had hoped. Meanwhile, Emma continued to struggle financially with the expenses of new parenthood, and she made several more attempts to ask me for assistance with various baby-related costs. David also found himself in a difficult position, wanting to be a supportive grandfather but feeling torn between his loyalty to me and his desire to help Emma. He started providing some financial assistance to Emma on his own, but he couldn't compensate for all the support I had previously provided. Emma began to realize that she had been taking my financial contributions for granted and hadn't fully understood how much I had been helping her over the years. The situation reached a critical point when Emma's biological mother arrived to babysit one evening while Emma and Sean went out for dinner. She left the baby alone in the apartment while she went to buy cigarettes. A neighbor heard the baby crying and called the police, who found the infant unattended and contacted Emma and Sean. Emma was horrified and realized her biological mother couldn't be trusted with her child's safety. However, she was also embarrassed about the incident and worried it might affect her custody of the baby. Emma called me the next day, crying and distressed, and asked if I would consider helping her find reliable childcare so she could return to work without worrying about her baby's safety. She admitted that her biological mother had proven to be as unreliable as ever, and she said she was beginning to understand why I had been such an important part of her life for so many years. I listened to her concerns and sympathized with her situation, but I also reminded her that she had established boundaries about our relationship, and I was trying to respect those boundaries. Emma asked if we could discuss rebuilding our relationship and finding a way to move forward that would work for both of us. I told her that I would be willing to have that conversation, but it would need to include an acknowledgement that her comments about real mothers had been hurtful and unfair, and a genuine apology for dismissing the 15 years I had spent raising and supporting her. Emma was quiet for a long time, then said she needed to consider what I had said. Several weeks passed without further communication from Emma, and I assumed she had decided not to pursue reconciliation because she wasn't willing to apologize or acknowledge she had been wrong. David continued to visit Emma and the baby regularly, and kept me updated on their well-being, but he respected my decision not to resume financial support or active involvement until Emma was ready to address the issues between us. Then, one evening, Emma appeared at our house unannounced, carrying her baby and looking exhausted and overwhelmed. She asked if she could speak with me privately. We sat in the living room while David went to the kitchen to give us space. Emma told me that she had been reflecting on our conversation and everything that had transpired since she announced her pregnancy, and she realized she had been wrong to dismiss our relationship and the role I had played in her life. Emma said that becoming a mother herself had helped her comprehend how much love and sacrifice was involved in raising a child, and she had come to appreciate that biology wasn't the sole factor that made someone a true parent. She said that her biological mother had given birth to her, but I was the one who had actually raised her and been there for her through all the important moments of her life. She apologized for hurting me and expressed hope that I would consider resuming our relationship as mother and daughter. I told Emma that I appreciated her apology and her willingness to acknowledge her error, but I also explained that rebuilding trust would require time and wouldn't happen overnight. I said that I had been deeply hurt by her rejection of our relationship and her dismissive comments about real mothers. While I was glad she had come to understand the value of what we had shared, I needed to see consistent evidence that she truly valued our relationship before I could fully invest in it again. Emma asked what she could do to prove that she had changed her perspective and truly wanted to rebuild our relationship. I told her that actions would speak louder than words, and that I would need to see her treating me with the respect and consideration she would show to someone she truly considered to be her mother. Over the following months, Emma made consistent efforts to include me in her life and her baby's life, asking for my advice on parenting decisions and inviting me to spend time with him regularly. She stopped making comments about biological versus step relationships and started referring to me as her son's grandmother without any qualifiers. I gradually began to provide limited financial assistance again, starting with small contributions to help with baby supplies, and slowly increasing my involvement as Emma demonstrated that she truly valued our relationship. I was careful not to resume the same level of financial support immediately, because I wanted to make sure that Emma's change of heart was genuine and lasting, rather than just a response to her immediate financial needs. The process of rebuilding our relationship took almost a year, but eventually we were able to establish a new dynamic that felt healthy and sustainable for both of us. Emma never again made comments about real versus fake family relationships, and she consistently treated me with the love and respect I had always hoped for from a daughter. I resumed providing financial support at levels that felt appropriate and comfortable, and I became actively involved in my grandson's life as his grandmother.